You are listening to episode number 90 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Today we're talking about WSPRnet as well as some other things, so stick around. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am your host for this podcast. Today we are talking with John Jacobs, Whiskey 6 Delta Bravo Oscar. He is the podcast host of the Hamradio 360 Field Radio podcast. We are talking about WSPRnet as well as his podcast and some other stuff. Had a very nice conversation with him, and I really appreciate him coming on. So we're going to get to his interview here in just a second. But before we do, I wanted to mention everything that you hear on this episode, all the links and everything that we talk about is going to be in the show notes, and you can find those at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/90. That's the number 90. Wow, it's amazing. Here we are, already episode number 90. That's 10 away from the 100 mark. Thank you all very much for your continued support and your listening and just everything that y'all do. I mean, y'all are the reason that I do this podcast. I love doing it, don't get me wrong, but I do it for y'all. So with that being said, I do want to say one thing though. I am trying to grow my links list, and with amateur radio, it's all about community. Well, being that this is a ham radio podcast, it's also about community. So if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a podcast that I don't know about, if you have a blog, send me a link to your whatever your content is, and I'll put it on my links page. I want to help y'all grow just like y'all have helped me grow. Getting the word out to hams that are listening, hams that watch on YouTube, all the great information that we can get out there. It's great to have one spot where we can do that. And I want to be that spot. So if you have a ham blog, a YouTube channel, a podcast, whatever, send me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com, and I'll put it on my links list and get a nice little repository, I guess you could say, of blogs. So the other thing that I want to mention one of the things I want to mention before we get on to the interview, where can you find me? You can find me on Facebook. The page is at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. The groups, which is a little easier for everybody to communicate. So if anything, join the group, please. And that's at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. I'm on YouTube. I have some YouTube videos up there. Mainly it's just my podcast episodes with my logo on there. So it's not really exciting. But one of these days, maybe I'll get something a little bit more exciting for y'all to watch on YouTube. But you can find me there at youtube.com/everythinghamradio. And last but not least, you can find me on Twitter, which is probably the easiest place to get a hold of me at, and that's at K5CLM. The other thing that I want to mention, the last thing that I want to mention before we get on with the interview, is my signs. As y'all know, last month I launched a new sign business, and I gave a special discount, 50% off of some signs. I've posted some pictures of some ones that I've done. Some people have taken me up on the sale price, $15. They've gone up since then, but they're still not too bad. Same price. Right now they're listed at $25, and I'm thinking about putting a discount on there again. Maybe 25 is a little high. I hadn't quite figured out. I might drop it down to 20. But it doesn't have to be the pictures that I have, of radio tower, of the Hamradio 360 logo that I did for George and Jeremy and Kale. I've done some for, I did one with a Facebook avatar that Jeff uses. I did one with the Boy Scout Boy Scout logo, I believe it was. I did a couple others. So it doesn't have to be ham radio related. It doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be just ham radio, okay? It can be whatever. It could be your favorite sports team. It could be your favorite, your favorite, a picture of a house or something like that. I can do pretty much anything. Put whatever you want on there. So hit me up on that. You can send me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Let me know what you want. But you can go over to my swag store and find it on there. And that's at everythinghamradio.com/swag store. I've got the standard ones that I'm looking at, the antenna tower that's part of my logo. You could order the Ham Radio 360 logo on there. And also have a new thing. I came up with an idea a couple weeks ago about your home state. Having a outline of your home state with maybe a little dot where you live at in the state, and your name and your call sign. Those are the three standard, I'm having air quotes here, standard options that are on there. And then you can also do the custom one. So go to the website, choose if you want custom or one of the standard ones, and let me know what you want on there. There's a little text box you can fill out, super easy to do. I also have the name plates, so you can have your call sign or your name on. Those are $15, I believe. So check those out. I've got some other stuff in the swag store as well that you can buy. But those are the ones that I make. Help me to grow this business and help support my family. So without anything else, let's go ahead and get on to the interview with John. Hey y'all, we are here today with John Jacobs, Whiskey 7 Delta Bravo Oscar. I'm not going to say the other one. That I don't know. That just no.
We'll just go with Dead Buzzard Odor.
Well, okay, yeah, I guess we can go with that.
Go with that one.
Yeah. So John, why don't you first off introduce yourself a little bit and tell all of us how you got into ham radio, and we'll go from there.
So, like I said, my name's John Jacobs, W7DBO. My original call sign was KC7WVP. And then I am a third-generation ham. So my grandfather, James Jacobs, or everybody knew him on the radio as Jake Jacobs, he got his novice back in the 50s. He was a World War II veteran. He was actually a communications for the Army, and then he ended up being full-time Army after the war. And so he got into amateur radio. And then my father, WA7ZBO, got his ticket in the late 60s. And then I got mine, so I became the third generation. I got mine in 1996. And then after my grandfather went a silent key, the time was coming where his call was going to be put back into the rotation. So I quickly upgraded to general at that time and got his call sign, so we preserved in the family. So I've been doing this for 96 to now, so 20 years. A lot of it's just been using it within the family communications, and playing around a little bit. It wasn't until I moved homes and was able to we built our home, so I was able to wire better for antennas and towers. And so I really got active in the hobby about 6 years ago. And so I built my house knowingly right next to a very large 2 transmission lines on the south end of my property. Yeah. So I did that. I'm on a 3/4 acre lot, but that's not good enough. So I have a high noise level. And so I've always kind of used amateur radio in the field from my old home. And so when I moved here, I thought I would be more of a ham shack operator. And then so that didn't work out too well. So I stayed in the field, and then started building, got more into Go boxes and Go racks and cases, and started building enough that my wife asked me to monetize this hobby of mine to pay for my experimentation. So I created a small company, Comms to Go, and kind of went with that for a little bit as a part-time job. And I kind of still do that on the side. I build stuff when people ask, but we went to Hamcation in Dayton with a booth and realized that we're kind of a very niche thing. So every once in a while I get a phone call, and that's great, and I help people out with some boxes, either locally or somewhere. And so then talking to Kel with my association with that, because I site sponsored Hamradio 360, and then I met Kel the first time in Xenia this last year. And it was right after he said, hey, we're looking for more content contributors in the Hamradio 360 network. And so I had the idea of doing a MCOM show for him. And then after I pitched that, then after we got talking after Xenia, we thought, let's open it up to be a little bit wider, because I felt the content it would be too hard to find guests for just MCOM. So we created the Field Radio podcast, which is under the 360 network. And the minute I did that, then Kel announced an early sabbatical retirement. So I joked that I'm the one that took out Kel.
Yeah, it's all your fault.
Yeah. More like I think he saw the opportunity with 2 shows producing that he could take a well-deserved vacation for a couple months.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
well-deserved.
And I understood that when he said, it's family and I need to take care of family, and I understood that. And before I became a content producer, and then after becoming a content producer, I really understand that now. So we look forward to seeing Kel come back in January on the 360 network. And so the other show is, of course, The Workbench, if your listeners aren't aware of that, with George and Jeremy, that swear they raise my IQ point at least a notch every time I listen to their show. That they get so deep and so technical. I never thought I would go there with amateur radio, but it's great. It's great to listen to.
Yeah, I think they raise mine a little bit, but I feel like they lower it sometimes, because I'm like, what? I had to go back and listen to it. I'm like, wait, what? And back up again. Of course, with theirs, it's like it takes 2 days of me going back and forth to work to listen to it, because it's typically an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and my commute's 30 minutes. So I listen to them on the way to work, I listen to them on the way home, I listen to them on the way to work, I listen to them on the way home. Even at 1.5 speed, which is what I normally listen to podcasts at, it still takes me a good 2 days to listen to their podcast. But their podcasts are great. I especially love the last one. If any of y'all haven't listened to that, I highly recommend y'all go back and listen to last week's, or to this week's episode, I guess is what it was. They did a roundtable on all the digital voice modes and stuff. It was really great, and I highly recommend that y'all go and listen to it if y'all have any interest at all in digital voice. So, do you have kids?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids. My oldest is 7, and then that's Keaton, and then a boy, and then I have a daughter, Caitlin, that is 5, and then I have our youngest is a son, which is 2 going on crazy 2. So, or 3, either way.
So you're working on
he's loads of fun. You're
working on the 4th generation ham then.
Yes, Keaton, he has his own YouTube channel, and he put out he wanted me, I helped him record it. He put out something, for when we were up at the solar eclipse, and that got a little popularity, and we were up at Field Day, and we were doing digital voice, and we were doing digital mode, and voice, and he kept on wanting to go back to voice. And I tell you that people talk about, amateur radio hobby, not enticing the young, or, we're a dying generation, I guess they say, or a dying hobby. Talk about pile up breaking.
Mm-hmm.
My son got on there, and he got on voice, and you just be amazed of everybody that stood by, opened up, let him get in. He was having so much fun with that. And I'm so appreciative of all the, Field Day, competition, not a competition. But they really do open up and cater when they do hear a young voice on there. And so I think our hobby is opening and welcoming to it. I think we just need to find more ways to get the youth involved. And so, my son wants to become after Field Day, he's like, when do I get my call sign? And when do I take my test? And so we're working on that with him right now. So he's 7, so hopefully he'll get it before he's 8, and then he'll become 4th generation.
Now, was it you that I heard that is working on some kind of kid-friendly training thing?
Yeah, so he had, like I said, he has a YouTube channel where he's really into creating tutorials, of course, with Minecraft and Roblox and all things that. And so he wanted to create, as part of him studying for the test, some type of a YouTube series for kids on taking a technician exam. And that sounded really easy in the beginning, but as you know, as a content creator, that's going to be a project for us, definitely.
Yeah.
He's done some stuff for his school, created a website for being prepared and emergency preparedness, and of course his YouTube stuff. He naturally talks, so I don't think I really need to write a script for him. I think I just need to kind of teach him and then let him talk.
Now, you have a YouTube channel too, right?
Yeah, so I have one before the Field Radio podcast. I started creating one just kind of on my 3D printing and different things like that. But for the Field Radio podcast, we do have a YouTube channel. That's where I'm kind of dedicating content on when we do build projects, kind of inspired by the Workbench and them doing build projects. So we put build projects on there. We're going to do product. We have some product reviews. Just anytime I see anything with the podcast that it's so hard to explain, you just say, please go watch this little 3-minute YouTube video.
So
and
why?
It's more of a supplemental to the podcast.
Right. So why did you, if you had the YouTube channel beforehand, why did you choose to go with an audio-only podcast rather than continuing on with a YouTube channel and doing like a vlog or something like that?
I like the podcast forum. I like how you could get a guest on and like we're doing here, we're just kind of having a conversation. It's a lot less production time. I mean, Gary Pierce with the Hamradio Now TV, he does a great job at it. It's just a huge production. Him and David Goldenberg, just a lot of time. And I listen to podcasts more naturally myself than YouTube, like you said, because of the commute. And so I kind of went that direction. And when I did talk to Cal about that and say, should we do a YouTube only thing, a vlog, a type thing? And in podcasting seemed a little more natural for me, even though I'm, by trade, I'm a video producer and, audio engineer. So I'm kind of in that realm. I'm an educator also. So I went that direction. And interestingly enough, you see a lot of participation on people listening to the podcast, but it doesn't translate over to YouTube. So I'm not sure if people are the podcast group or people that just like listening on the commute, and then you say, go to your YouTube channel to see a video on this, and then they just, it's out of sight, out of mind once they get to their work or home.
I'm kind of just the opposite of what I would foresee you doing on your end, since you have that video background. I do it, and I know Kel does it as well, if memory serves me correct. We'll record our podcast episode, and then Libsyn, our host, will automatically format it into a YouTube video and post it on YouTube for us. But all it has is just our logo, and then the audio in the background.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, if I had the bandwidth to do it, because I'm like Kale, and literally exactly like Kale. My recording studio is in a horse barn. And my internet connection is my cell phone tethering. I actually told him about the cell phone tethering. So, but if I had the bandwidth and stuff, I would do, record my podcast as a video, and then grab the audio from it and put it on the podcast host.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's just the time to create, and like I said, Gary does an excellent job of that. He video switches. He's doing a lot better with that now. He used to do a lot of editing. Now he's made a substantial investment in some equipment to do live to tape, basically, or actually goes live to Facebook while he records now. Mm-hmm. So I think he's found a way to cut down on that production time, because he doesn't have to edit after the fact. So I think it's something I'm going to look at. It's like I said, I'm just surprised. I just don't see the translation between podcast listeners and YouTube. And maybe it's because YouTube has better analytics, and you could identify exactly how long people are watching and what time they stopped watching and what's your average viewer time. Whereas podcasting, especially with Libsyn, it's a download, and you don't know if they even listen to your podcast. They may have just downloaded it. So I think maybe when they get better analytics in podcasting, maybe that number will play better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do want to try and strengthen up YouTube. I want to do a lot of separate things like product reviews and things that I've found work, and a lot more tutorials on 3D printing, and try and incorporate that into like a supplemental for the show.
Right. I mean, that sounds awesome. I mean, and especially if you take that YouTube channel and use it as a supplement for all three programs, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I try to do it, afterwards. I have it, Libsyn does it automatically for me, and I'm like, okay, well, okay, I'm up on YouTube, I get a few views on it or whatever, but after a couple minutes or so looking at that logo, it gets really boring.
Yeah.
So a couple episodes I've tried to, put, like, whenever I ask a question, I'll put a slide up of that question and then talk about it. And then when the next question goes up, I'll put a slide up of that question. And then, put the graphics for my show sponsors in there when the commercial's on. So I try to do a little bit more. But
yeah,
I did it one time when I did all the questions, and it literally took me like 6 or 7 hours at work one day to make a hour-long video of the podcast, putting all the questions up. And my computer's not that fast, so it really just, I haven't done it since. But one of these days, I'm going to have
even okay.
One of these days, I'm going to have my little camera sitting up here, recording what I'm doing, because I'm sitting here, I'm just moving with my hands and talking and
yeah, it's like I said, it's that content creation time, and it's 10. A very, very conservative effort is considered a 1 hour of content is 10 hours of work, and that's like the very, very fast, they call it rapid design or rapid instruction. Mm-hmm. Typically, I do law enforcement training. We're into 10 hours is maybe just for the curriculum, but if we do something where it's e-learning type training or online training, it's 40, 80, 120 hours of effort to 1 hour of production.
I can imagine that.
Yeah, and so, like I said, and I don't know, maybe I have a local amateur radio guy he runs T-Jack Survival. I'm trying to get him on the show because he's kind of incorporated Hamradio into his survival type YouTube channel. And I was kind of talking to him about how do you get YouTube viewership, and it just seems like sometimes podcasting it's easier to get viewership. But he kind of talked about that YouTube is a very prolonged, you just have to get stuff out there and let it sit for days, mm-hmm. and you get 6 or 7 hits a day, and that it compounds, and you get more videos, and it compounds, and mm-hmm. he says it's something you have to really work at.
Yeah.
It's a long-term thing, and even Jeremy said that with his YouTube channel. He didn't really see success for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think YouTube is a great form. I learned so much with that. I mean, it's anything I want to find out to do.
Right.
I'm just finding somebody that did a video, and then I make sure I watch another one just to make sure they knew what they were talking about. So,
well, I have really enjoyed your podcast and
thank you.
All the stuff that you've done. I've really enjoyed it, and so thank you for becoming part of the Ham Radio 360 family there and putting this on. So we're going to take a quick break and hear from West Mountain Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk about WSPRnet. And so hang on, y'all. We will be right back. Are you tired of lousy propagation conditions and wondering how to work some real DX for a change? Maybe you spin the dial and wonder what's going on below the voice segment of the HF bands. The answer is you're missing out. You're missing out on digital modes, a rapidly growing and exciting part of amateur radio. Work real DX with the incredible JT65 and JT9 modes. It's no exaggeration when I tell you, you will work stations you never thought possible, even using low power and compromised antennas. Have fun making new contacts in modes such as PSK31, Olivia, Radio Teletype, Slow Scan TV, and many more. The Rig Blaster Advantage is everything you need to operate these exciting digital modes. Made right here in the US, the Rig Blaster interface has set the standards for nearly 20 years. Thousands of satisfied operators have learned their Rig Blaster Advantage will provide solid digital communications, easy operating, and reliability. Don't miss out on the fun and excitement any longer. Head on over to everythinghamradio.com/WMR for more information and learn how to get your free USB port monitor with your purchase. Hey y'all, we are back with John Jacobs, W7DBO, and we are talking about, well, first off, we talked about his podcast, but now we're going to go into a part of the ham radio world called WSPRnet. Now, the reason I did this, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this. I got an email a couple days ago, and it came from a gentleman by the name of Pat. And I'm gonna guess here at the last name according to his email address because it just says Pat H. But I'm gonna say Pat Hens is I'm believing what his name was. And I hope it's okay, Pat, if I read this. But he writes, as a 100% newbie, I'm enjoying all the great information. I am new to ham, studying for my general because I am interested in WSPRnet, and he asked me to do a episode on WSPRnet. Well, a couple weeks ago, well, maybe a couple months ago, I guess, back when the the solar eclipse happened, I remember that John over at the Field Radio Podcast was talking about WSPRnet, and he kind of talked about it briefly a little bit. But for those of y'all that didn't listen to his podcast on that episode, John, can you tell us a little bit about what it was that you did during the eclipse and how you used WSPRnet during that event?
So we decided to go all in. We're in Utah, just in Provo Valley for those reference, by Brigham Young University. And the totality line was just north of us by a couple hours in Idaho. So we decided this is the closest we're going to get to a total eclipse and be in totality. So we went all in. We rented there was some alfalfa farmers up there renting a corner of their land. So we booked ahead. We heard the Armageddon-like predictions from our local media about traffic being impossible, so we went up 2 days in advance. We got established. We stared at the clouds for a day and a half, being like, do not bring clouds in. And we watched the cloud prediction. It was cloudy, not cloudy, cloudy, not cloudy. And it was stressing us out. But so we went all in and we went up, and so as part of that, I took up a bunch of cameras and I thought I'm going to record this as much as I can. I took up a drone. And in the end, I think I tried to do too much. I don't think I got to watch. I kind of didn't stare at the sun, I guess, enough. Because when it was done, you're like, you want it over again. So on the ham radio side, first of all, this was kind of a chance for us to get in the field, and we like doing that. So my father went with us, and my mother, and we took our families up, and we set up basically a base camp. And for amateur radio side, we had some VHF antennas up because there were some nets going on, some MCOM nets, some spurious 5.2 nets, just traffic reports. There were some people that were in the EOC's long I-15 corridor. So we kind of used that as a reference on the way up and while we were there on how things were going. And we actually ended up staying over another night just because we heard such bad traffic reports the day after, or the day of the eclipse after it was over. So, and then we thought, well, we heard about that they were doing this experiment with the universities and the HamSci project, which I actually talked to them when we were in Xenia, and kind of got excited about that. And so I wanted to participate in that. But since I was in totality, like I said, I did too much with photography and videography. I didn't want to be on the radio missing this once-in-a-lifetime event. So WSPRnet came to mind because I heard that they were automatically pulling that data. And so WSPRnet is something that could run in the background. I got it turned on the night before, and it just kind of ran. And it was my way to kind of participate over the HF bands. We did some QSOs before and after and stuff, but during the eclipse, we just let the computer run and do its thing.
So, what exactly is WSPRnet? Because I've heard little bits and pieces of it, but what exactly is it?
So Whisper, like any great thing, has a great acronym, WSPR. So if you look at that, you say, well, it's called Whisper. And it stands for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. So it comes along the same lines as the JT modes, the JT65, and stuff like that. It's the same person, Joe Taylor, K1JT. But what Whisper is, unlike those other modes, is Whisper is really more like a organic beacon network. So you are not making a QSO. You're not making I contact you and then you reply back and contact me. It's a one-way communication. And so it's meant to probe weak signal and propagation. And so it's a tool in the tool belt. You can't necessarily say if you transmitted and then someone heard you say, in Europe, you're not going to be able to count that as a country contacted. It's not considered a QSO.
You mean I can't use that in my worked all states or anything like that?
No, you can't use it for worked all states because the two-way it's like I said, it's one way, and then the second way is back via the internet. So as me as a transmitting station on Whisper, I will transmit and it's in 2-minute segments, so you have to make sure that your clock is accurate, so you can be within plus or minus 1 second. In 2-minute segments, you're either listening or transmitting. So if you're transmitting, you transmit for 2 minutes, and this is where you keep it down to 1 watt, half a watt, 5 watts at the most. It's really low, and you transmit for 2 minutes, and then you wait about 10 minutes, and then you go online and say, who heard me? And then all of a sudden all these people are popping up. So the inverse of that is if you're listening on a band, and everybody you hear within that 2 minutes, if you've checked to automatically upload, you upload everybody you heard within that 2-minute period. So then they can go online and say, oh, Utah heard me, or Texas heard me. So it's really a way to experiment with your antennas and experiment with propagation.
Now, if I'm thinking this right, I might be totally confused with something else, but isn't there doesn't the WSPRnet controller that you have to get with it, doesn't it do it on 20 meters, and then 10 minutes later do it on 40 meters, and then 10 minutes later do it on 80 meters or something like that? Am I thinking right?
Yeah, so I guess we should back up and talk about what you need. So obviously you need a radio and an antenna, and you need some type of sound card or some type of interface. If you have a radio that has a built-in, like the ICOM 7300 or 7200 has a sound card built in, or something like the Signal Links or the Rig Blasters, you need some type of sound card, and then you need a computer running this free software. And then the software, if you have cat control also, it will change your frequencies, and also you can also tell it to auto-tune or not auto-tune, depending on your antenna. So the system, you can set it and say, I always want to be on 40 meters, and I always want to listen on 40 meters, and it'll stay there if you have to manually tune your radio. You could leave it up all day, all night, and it never transmits. So this is something that even if you don't have your general yet, or you don't have your ticket at all, this is something you can do right away, as long as you make sure that the transmit option is not checked. And then they have what's called band hopping, where you can tell it, I want to listen on 40 for 2 minutes, then I want to hop to 80, then I want to go to 10, then 15, and you kind of select in the program what bands you want to listen on. And then also you can select based on daytime or nighttime or gray line. So if you're running this for 24 hours, obviously, listening on 80 and 160 and even lower, you're probably not going to get much in daytime. So you can say only listen to 80, gray line and nighttime and in the morning. And then during the day, don't listen to 80 anymore. And also 10, 15, 20 drop off after gray line. So you can go in and say, I want these bands on these times a day. Then the last option you have is, and this is if you do have your general license, then you go in and say, I want to be able to transmit, and you transmit enable, and then you select what percent of the time do I want to transmit. So if I will say I only want to transmit 20% of the time, then 1 out of every 5 cycles, you'll listen for 4 and transmit for 1. And so you're not always transmitting and you're not always listening, depending on how you set up the software.
Now, you have to have some kind of external time thing for this, don't you? I mean, you can't just run it off the clock on your computer. Am I right on that?
They do say they recommend that you go to a website and download the time. I've just used my system time. It seems like that 2-minute segment, there's some fluff time in the beginning and end. Okay. So it doesn't seem like you have to be exact. Like we were up when we were in Idaho with the solar eclipse. I was just running off my system clock and I was picking up people and they were picking up me. So I knew my time was close enough. It's not like you have to be exact on like some of the other modes, but they recommend getting something downloaded that'll help your system clock be accurate.
Maybe that's like JT modes or something I'm thinking of. I remember doing...
Yeah, they're a little more sensitive.
Yeah, I think it was the episode that I was doing on JT modes I think it was Rhea that I interviewed for that, where she said they had to have some kind of external time clock thing. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm getting confused since it is the same guy that did it.
Yeah, it is.
So what kind of practical uses, I guess, would you use WSPRnet for?
It's going to help you, unless you have, and you kind of have to take the results with a grain of salt, because like we talked about, you're hopping around, you're band hopping, and other people are band hopping, and other people are transmitting. So you can't really take it and say, I transmitted on 20 and this exact station in Australia heard me. And then 2 minutes later, I transmitted on 40 and he didn't. Therefore, 20 is open, but 40 isn't. You can't draw those kind of conclusions because you don't know, did he stay, was he monitoring, I should say he or she, monitoring on 20? Did they not move? Or were they transmitting when you tried transmitting on 40? So unless you have a buddy that you coordinated with offline and said, hey, make sure you're listening on 20, then 40, then 80. So you're not going to get exact, but what you do get out of this system is a great way to understand and know the characteristics of your antenna, the characteristics of propagation. And so if you pay attention to all the Tabitha weather reports, I guess, and they say, the propagation is going to be like this. And then, well, in your certain particular location, they said the bands were dead, but then I was able to hear. And you got to realize that Whisper goes down to negative 28 dB. So I will listen to it. I'll turn up the volume and I hear absolutely nothing but static. And then it pops up that I heard 40 stations or whatever. So you can't take your ear and say that it's, you can't hear the signal. Sometimes you do. If the band conditions are better, you can hear them, or if they're a little stronger. So what I use it for is when I put up an antenna or I'm experimenting with a new antenna, a lot of times the way you face the dipole or I have a beam that's on a rotator, so I can kind of turn. I can point and say, I'm going to point it this way, and then I can all of a sudden I start lighting up East Coast and Europe. Or if I'm on 1 watt and the East Coast is hearing me, and then 2 minutes later I'm like, I'm going to bump it up to 5, and then all of a sudden I start getting into Europe. Then you can start learning the characteristics of your antenna and propagation. So like I said, it's a tool. It's not by any means a QSO, but it's a great way to understand your propagation and what you can and can't do. And if you're trying to get those worked all states, or if you're trying to get a rare contact, say in Europe or something. If you turn on Whisper and you can't get into, say, Germany with Whisper, you're not going to get in on voice. Because if you can't get in on such a weak signal to anybody in that part of the world, then trying to turn to voice on that band, there's a very low likelihood you're going to get it. However, if you're on 1 watt on 40 meters, say after gray line, and it's night now, and all of a sudden you're noticing you're just lighting up Europe on 1 watt where you used to need 5, then yeah, maybe it's a chance you could switch over to voice and give that DX a try.
So what exactly is transmitted when you're transmitting on Whisper? So
very, very simply, you get your call sign, your Maidenhead grid square, and what power you're transmitting. And so in the power transmitting you select, you tell it, say I'm transmitting at -7 dBm or -13 dBm. So you declare what power output you're doing on your radio, and that's it. So without any internet connection, if you had the ability from your computer to parse that information, you could take the data you get. You say, okay, I heard the call sign, and it logs in your system the time you got it, what their gain was, what frequency you were on, what their call, what their grid square is. So you could parse that information yourself, but Whisper website does all that for you. That's the great part. Is as long as this is a tool we're using, there's the tool that's on your computer that is capturing the data and then automatically uploading it to the website database, and then also your transmissions are being uploaded by someone else. So it's really, I guess, what you'd say in a nutshell, it's crowdsourced beacon networking, for lack of a better term.
There you go. So is it like, does your radio transmit CW or like RIDI or PSK31 or just a straight like digital mode type thing? Or
it's a digital mode. It's FSK, so it's a very, very limited narrow band mode that's only, I guess the only comparison would be, using it for the Whisper network. It's not like you're going to use a different program and pull it down. So it's got forward air correction. That's why it takes 2 minutes, is because you're running forward air correction on it. And that's how it's able to get you're so down in the noise, and yet you're still able to pull out signals because of that forward air correction. So yeah, it's FSK.
Okay. So now I have my WSPRnet set up here. I have all the equipment that I'm doing, and I've been listening and transmitting and all that. Where do I go to find out who heard me?
So if you go to Whisper, WSPRnet, which is kind of funny, WSPRnet.org. So WSPRnet.org. You can create a free account with your call sign there. And then once you're at that website, you can look, if you click on their map, and this is something even if you're not in WSPRnet. So say you want to know what the propagation is between your area and somewhere else. You can look at everybody else's data too. So this isn't something that, if you don't have the setup right now, or you're not interested in transmitting and listening from your own QTH, you can always pick somebody. And we have a person here, one of our operators, that is always on. And so I kind of use his, looking for his call sign, and then I can kind of see what he's able to do from his location. And that helps. So if you go to the website, that's where you can download your data, or you can go to their, it's a Google Map interface, and you can type in their call sign and say what band they were on, and then click update, and it'll just show that one station, all the stations they heard. And so that's why I say that it's half of it's on your computer, and the other half is a website and a database.
I'm looking at that map right now, and there's a guy here, somewhere here in the DFW area. It's November 5 Golf. And he actually was being heard by a guy up in Edmonton, I guess, Canada. I think that's what it is. I can't read it underneath the thing, but it's pretty neat. And y'all really need to go and check this map out if y'all haven't done it already. Again, that's WSPRnet.org, and there'll be links in the show notes as well. But it shows all kinds of people here in the U.S. and Canada. There's people in Europe. Don't see a whole lot of people in like Africa though, which there's like nobody in Africa. Australia, Japan, Russia. There's a couple stations in Russia that do this, but for some reason there's no Africa and there's no South America.
Yeah, and that's like I'm looking at it too right now, and you kind of understand. Well, it's limited internet because if they're not able to upload their information to the website. But this map is addicting, and I think you can spend more time on this map than watching cats on YouTube, as they say. You can really just kind of start poking around, and of course it's everybody's honesty on their grid square. Like one time I kept on hearing the station, and he was like above he was in the North Pole, above the Arctic Circle. And it was a station that was not, that call sign was not from Canada or Greenland. So I was wondering, maybe did he punch it in wrong, or is he just having fun with us? And saying, hey, like right now I can see one there's out in the middle of the ocean is a station. So maybe it might just be a ship that's using this to check, and it says heard by, so it's actually he's not transmitting, someone else is hearing him. So sometimes it might be ships out in the ocean. Sometimes I wonder if people are just having fun with us, just putting in some crazy grid square.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it sounds pretty neat. Is there specific frequencies that WSPRnet uses?
Yeah, so they are all. Yeah, they're all preset. All the way, in fact, I'm looking at it right now, even 2,200 meters. So this is HF and MF. 630 meters. Of course, we don't have anything we can try and listen, I guess, on our regular antennas with that. But 160 meters is really practically where we're at. So 160, 80, 60. So it is on 60. 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, 10, and 6 meter. And they even have 4 meter, 2 meter. And so on every one of those, there is a pre-established frequency. So on 40 meters, it's 7 dot, what did they say here? 0386 upper sideband. So they've already established, the WSPRnet system is already plugged in and saying we will always be on these frequencies at the 15 kilohertz. And then they kind of just vary off of that, either high or low, depending on what the computer does.
Cool. All right, y'all. So we are gonna take a break right there and hear a word from Dan, KB6NU, about the No Nonsense Study Guide. So stick around, y'all. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Dan, KB6NU, author of the No Nonsense Amateur Radio License Study Guides. My study guides have helped thousands get their license or upgrade to general class or extra class, and they can help you too. What makes them unique is my no-nonsense style. I don't bamboozle you with a lot of text. Instead, I give you just what you need to know in a simple, straightforward way that's designed to help you pass the test. One reader even told me, your study guide explained in a couple of paragraphs topics that the license manual needed a couple of pages to cover. Another wrote, the clarity and simplicity of your descriptions blew the license manual away. My study guides are available in paperback, in a variety of ebook formats, and even as audiobooks. Get your copy today. Go to kb6nu.com/ETHR for more info. Thanks.
Hey y'all, we are back with John Jacobs and Whiskey 7.
Delta Bravo Oscar.
Well, I was trying to think of the other one, but yeah, that works too.
Dead buzzard odor is my
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. I wasn't gonna say the other one. I'm not gonna say the other one. y'all are probably all wondering what the other one is. I'm not gonna say it.
It's a family secret.
Yeah. It's an inside joke. We're not gonna go there. So we were talking in the last segment about WSPRnet and looking at this website. This website is really active. I mean, there's over 806 million total spots in this database, and almost 900,000 just in the past 24 hours alone. So, I mean, this is very, very active, and there's 105 people online, and wow. So, I just totally lost my train of thought. I hate it when I do that. I think that's age. You know,
what is it? B12 they say.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think you need to take B12.
Oh, okay. I might have to write that down.
I don't know. They're going to light up your forum with that. Oh, B12 doesn't know anything.
So we talked a little bit about WSPRnet and what you used it for. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about, I guess maybe some of the functions that you do with it, or maybe elaborate more about how you use it?
Yeah, so especially with field, you talk about how this is a one-way thing with, you have to be internet connected. But so when you set up your new antenna at your home, like I said, this is a great tool, but you really want to have this type of setup with your field portable setup, and even down to your QRP, maybe your SOTA type, very lightweight system, because every time you set up your antenna, I always say that, especially with VHF work, you need an SWR meter, because you've now set up you're in an unknown location, and you're in an sometimes unknown propagation location, and you really don't know how your antenna is reacting to your local environment. Obviously, because if you're in the field and you say you're activating a park like for the POTA or the flora fauna, you're in an unknown place, and how long are you going to spend on single sideband on voice figuring out that your setup is not working? Whereas if this is a tool in your tool belt and you have a low power laptop, you don't necessarily need internet for this. Just turn it on, get your antenna set up, of course, check your SWR meter and your impedance, and all that's working right. But the true test is put that antenna up in the tree, set it up on top of wherever your mast is, and then just let it run for a couple minutes while you're cleaning up some things around your area or getting ready, and just kind of monitor, not necessarily transmitting, but just monitor what you're hearing and what you're getting. And then if you do have the benefit of internet, say you're at a park where you're getting internet, then go ahead and transmit 2 minutes and query the website. You're going to find out real fast what you're getting from that antenna or what you're getting from your setup. And then go ahead and take that down maybe and turn it or move it. So say you want to try and change your ground plane because you want to try and get some DX in a different direction, or you're looking for something like that. So it's a quick tool you can use in the field, even without internet, to kind of quickly query what's going on out there. And then, of course, propagation. You're going to find out if propagation is really good or really bad. And then you can base your field setup. So that's how I use it in the field, because I like using, I have a couple Chameleon products. I have a buddy pole, which I consider my experimenter antenna, because you can try so many different configurations with that. And so it's just kind of fun to use this WSPRnet with, say, the buddy pole. And they have like 40 different configurations you can do on each band, it seems like, in their book. And just try and put them up and see what happens on WSPR. And then once you find success in a setup, or you find out you moved your antenna, you hear some people say, yeah, I wasn't getting anything, and I moved that antenna 15 feet and the world opened up. It's usually with VHF that happens, but so that's a good way to use it in the field, figuring out what really is going on with your gear.
Yeah, your antenna might work just fine at your house, but if you come to our house, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah. If you come where I'm at, in Whisper works great here. So that's another thing. If you were in, all the JT modes and everything, if you're really in a bad high noise environment and you have the ability to put up some good antennas, then digital modes is really those type of modes. Maybe all you can do from home unless you're doing some remote base, but there's some things that like I said, it's a tool in your tool belt, and just like you would use, you mentioned your sponsor is West Mountain Radio, and I actually got a USB meter thanks to you guys. I mentioned that when I ordered last time. I got one of their computer battery analyzers to kind of just see what all my batteries were doing and how they were handling, and that's a good diagnostic tool. It even does solar panels, which is amazing.
Did you get the Epic Power Gate?
I didn't get the Epic. No, it's a computer analyzer, so it actually draws energy out of the battery, and it maps it for you, and it works across AGM and LiFePO4s, and so I can sap a battery and see what kind of actual amp hours, what watt hours I'm getting out of it. And then you can also load it up on a solar panel.
Yeah.
And get the solar panel to give you what you're truly getting out of it. So those kind of things you have, WhisperNet's one of those. It's like it's a high-tech antenna analyzer. These are all diagnostic tools that if you use them, like you use a battery analyzer, if you use an antenna analyzer, you use WhisperNet, it's that institutional knowledge you're going to gain about the hobby that's going to translate into you being more effective, and especially if you're in the field and electricity matters and things like that. So that's why I say WhisperNet is, you may not be into these kind of modes, but even if I'm strictly a single sideband voice guy, you at least want to have this website up, just like how another website, good website is all the spotting networks. People spot each other and they say what's open. So this is kind of one of those tools that you have.
Now, are you talking about the Power Check?
Yeah, the Power Check. I actually got that one too, and I haven't had a chance to use that too much.
That is a really neat thing.
Yeah, that's what I want too, because I've used the Tenergy power meters, but when I'm done with an event or I'm done with a field deployment, I always seem to forget to look at the total amp hours used, and then you unplug it and it's gone.
Yeah.
But the Power Check, I got the Power Check too, and I'm really excited for that too, because that'll actually map exactly what you used. It comes in, comes out. But it's a CBA4, which is the battery analyzer. You actually just hook this up. It has a USB, so it hooks up to a computer, and you plug it into a battery, and you say pull 10 amps until the voltage gets to like 8 volts or 10 volts, or I cut it off at 11 volts because that's essentially where we stop. And then I can map that battery, and I can map the pole, and I can see, this battery's not performing like it used to. It's time to take it out. Mm-hmm. And so that's been, and I've actually had fun with that lately, because my battery charger has like a recovery mode, and I had a battery that was just gone, an AGM. So I thought I'd have fun with it, and so I drained it, and I was getting like terrible results off it. And then I did the battery recovery, and then the battery recovery, and I kept doing the battery recovery 4 or 5 times, and until I started seeing a diminished return on the results of the battery recovery mode. But it just tells you, this battery's still good, or this battery's not performing. Like I said, the solar panels, it's so hard to tell, because solar panels, interestingly enough, when you put too much, if they pull too much power, there's actually a peak where when you start pulling too much amperage out of them, they actually diminish their returns, which is interesting, or they heat up and they diminish. So it's just a diagnostic tool I really like, and so I've been having fun with that. And I'll probably do a kind of a YouTube review on that battery analyzer, because that's just been I've been plugging in every battery I own this past week.
And that power check thing is really neat. I got one of those a couple months ago from West Mountain Radio, and I mean it will do like 8 different things. It'll do voltage, it'll go current flow, wattage, amp hours, all that, and it records everything that goes across it, and it'll store up to like 100,000 data points, and that's like almost 2.5 months worth of data if you pull it once a minute, and that's without power to it. So you'll never lose it. You'll never have to worry about, oh, I unplugged it, I just lost everything I did. And it has a nice little, backlit LCD screen, and it's really, really neat. So, and you can get those, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken,
it was on your special, wasn't it? That's
and it still is. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. You can get $50 off of the power check until October 31st. And it has a little discount code. It's $134.95 that you can get brand new from West Mountain Radio. And you can get additional details on that if you go to everythinghamradio.com/WMR. And then on top of that, you get a free USB port monitor with your purchase too. So make sure you get that if you go there. But there's a bunch of neat stuff. And next quarter, I believe we're going to be doing the Epic Power Gate. We were going to do it this quarter, but they were having some major problems keeping them in stock. They're selling so fast. But
because they do LifePo 4, which I love LifePo 4 batteries. That's like I said, my AGMs are on their way out the door. But the fact that you got a solar charge controller built into that can switch modes is it's new, and it's great, especially how lightweight it is. The power check, whenever I speak at local clubs, people always ask when I talk about solar power and solar batteries and panels and all that, well, how much power do I need? Well, it's like, well, everybody's unique. Everybody has, even if you have the same radio, your operating techniques, how long do you transmit? How long do you listen? Are you moving around? Are you tuning? What's your battery? What's your radio? What's your panels? Everything is unique. And so I just tell people you need to really map what you need and what's your goal. Do you want to be out for an afternoon? Are you an MCOM guy? Do you want to be able to operate through the night? Are you field day? And you really don't know your power consumption until you use something like the power check that's going to give you that graph and tell you this is exactly what you need. And especially for people that are going out and buying, say, the Biano Power LifePo 4 batteries, they're not the cheapest batteries out there. They're the best investment, but they're not your cheap AGM you're going to get off on at battery stores. So if you're going to make a big investment in solar panels and your radio and your gear, you're dumping even, say, $1,000 on your radio, and hopefully our wives aren't listening to this. But a typical setup, you may be $2,000 by the time you get batteries and solar panels and radios and tuners and antennas. Yeah, 100. What is that? 130 for the power check.
100 right now with the discount. It's 135. Without the discount, it's 185.
Still, at 185, that's going to save you from overbuying a lot of things. And then it's going to also tell you, when your battery does go dry, if you have that plugged in, you're going to understand why it happened and what you need to do to improve your setup to prevent that happening. So it's, like I said, it's a great tool in the tool belt, and I'm excited. I'm actually going out of town this weekend, and I'm going to plug it into my portable fridge in my truck. And I just want to map and see what my fridge needs for power while I'm in Vegas, and what was my power consumption while I was on this trip. And with all those data points, I can go I can be gone on a 4-day trip and see how much energy I expended.
Yeah, get home, plug the USB cord into it, and download it to your computer and look at that graph. Yeah,
and then I know, am I going to have a nice, cool fridge next time I go out on a trip. So, like I said, it's just not necessarily for amateur radio. It has a great application for any type of emergency preparedness or survival. To understand what your batteries are doing and what your panels are doing, and preventing you from spending too much money on it.
Right. So we kind of got off on a tangent there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem at all. But I did want to come back a little bit to the WSPRnet thing. You mentioned you don't have to have the internet connection, and you mentioned also that you can figure out what you receive or whatever. Is there a computer program that will tell you who you received, that you could do it without internet?
So you're going to hear receive only, obviously, because you're not going to know who heard you unless you go to the common database. And you're going to get a data dump from the program that's going to give Maidenhead squares. And I'm going to have to do some research on that. And if we find it, we'll put it in the show notes. If somebody has created a mapping system to plug that in to like an offline map, or even just because looking at maiden squares, unless you've memorized the map, you can kind of look and see, because it's not even going to give you, like with WinLink, it'll tell you how many miles away type thing. So that would even be good just to see. And I think it does give miles. It might. Let's see. Yeah, it does. It has a DT, which I think is distance. So yeah, just looking at the data, you're going to see how many miles. You're not going to know which direction, but you're going to know how many miles away that contact was.
Well, that's cool. This WSPRnet sounds really interesting, and it's something that you can do that will, if it doesn't help you, it's going to help other people. Listening and hearing and talking and well, not necessarily talking, but I guess talking, kind of air quotes here, talking back to other people, and letting them hear you, it's going to help other people. So even if you don't have your general class license, Pat, you can get this and set it up and listen only, and you can upload this data and help those other people that are on this WSPRnet know where they're going. So, Pat, don't wait until you get your general license. Go ahead and get this. Go ahead and get this set up and get it running. And once you get your general license, which when you do, please let me know, and I will be the first to congratulate you. Well, probably not the first because it's like 2 weeks now, but I will be one of the first people to congratulate you. Then you can get on the air and transmit and find out who's hearing you. So don't waste time. Don't delay, I guess you could say, on getting this set up if this is something that you're interested in. So, John, I thank you very much for coming on. I thank you for doing the Field Radio podcast. And I also wanted to mention, I really enjoy the last segment of your podcast, the training thing. Is there a place you can download the individual training segments? First off, tell everybody what I'm talking about.
So you mentioned that because the last, did I not do one the last show? I don't.
No, you didn't.
And I'm not doing one this one. So I'm going to bring those back. So I'm part of a ARES group and some local emergency response communication type things, and all your NATs usually have a training item. So everybody checks in and then has a training item. Well, I've been doing this for a couple years now, and I've amassed like this big library of training items that I've written that are 2 or 3 minutes, isolated little topics on different things, usually revolving around emergency preparedness or being prepared or knowing your equipment. And so I just decided as part of the podcast, when I would have a topic that didn't go too far, and I wanted to try and keep my podcast down maybe between the 30 to 40, because they say that's kind of the commute time. So when I would have a podcast that didn't go upwards to an hour, I decided to put in a training item, and so kind of just fill in some more of that. So the training items are coming from my own website, so we have fieldradiopodcast.org, and that directs you to the Hamradio 360 site, and goes to where all my episodes are with all the training items. But if you're looking for just the text, say you want to plagiarize it and use it for your own training events, it's w7dbo.net. So Whiskey 7 Delta Bravo Oscar.net is my kind of personal website that I've had for quite a while. and I'm building as I put them up in the podcast. I'm adding them to that website. So my website doesn't have the full catalog, but it's ever growing, and it's got some other stuff on what you want in a Go kit, some inventory type items, and so that was kind of my original educational website before I started the podcast.
Well, here's something that I would recommend to you, okay? Even if you do go over that 30, 45 minute mark, go ahead and put it in there. Because, I'm serious here. I mean, because it's like, I really enjoy listening to those, even if I'm already at work and I'm done with your interview segment and you still have the training segment done, I'll listen to it on the way home.
All right. It's coming back in this episode for you.
Well, I think
it was out right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you get something and you have it in every episode and people start using it. I mean, I've talked to my EM here about doing it on our nets whenever you have it up there. And if it's not there, then I can't do it. And I'm sure there's other people out there that might do the same thing.
So have you actually pulled the voice down, or do you use the text?
I use the voice.
Really? See,
yeah.
That's why I started in the beginning with my call sign in the beginning and end, and I've tried to keep them under 3 minutes for repeater timeouts.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you pause it in the middle just to let the repeater reset or not.
No.
But that was kind of the original intent of it, was I want to provide an audio clip like they do Amateur Newsline.
Yeah, have it where it's we can do it on a net or at a meeting or something like that. I've played it at a couple of our club meetings. The last 2 months, I've played your training session as part of our monthly meeting. So please put it in there, even if it's over 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever. Go ahead and put it in there. I mean, it's that 3 minutes
for that feedback.
Yeah, that 3 minutes is only going to add a couple megs, so that's no biggie, and it's only going to add a couple minutes of listening time, which is no biggie. People don't. I mean, yes, the statistics show and studies show and all that 30 to 45 minutes or so is the optimal time for a podcast, I've read. But on the flip side of that, I've also read that podcast is not like radio shows. People listen like I do to George and Jeremy for 2 or 3 days. Or, maybe I'll listen to work and then listen on my lunch break and then listen on my way home, listen while I'm mowing the yard or whatever. So, I mean, podcasting is not necessarily a time limiting factor. People are not going to listen. Yeah. People are not going to not listen to your show because you went 48 minutes instead of 45 minutes.
That's true.
So put it in there, please. If nothing else, just put it in there for me.
Yeah, because I just thought, well, if I'm low on content and I haven't been doing, I got the build project done where I walked through from inception to creation of a Go box, and I did that for a YouTube series, and I alluded to it in the show, and then I had the training item that was carrying along with it. But then the last couple of guests I've just been, maybe I'm getting more comfortable interviewing. It just seems like we just are able to talk more and cover more material, and I really don't edit out anything. I just kind of clean it up a little bit. So yeah, the last couple of interviews, I'm like, I'm at 55 minutes, 65 minutes. I'm like, I'll just skip the training item, skip the thing, but I will bring it back for you.
Yeah, I was the same way. And if you go back to my early episodes, the first, 25, 30, well, actually the first, there's 52 weeks in a year. So the first 50 episodes or so, when I was by myself before I started interviewing people, I tried to keep it at 30, 45 minutes or so, because that's a lot of talking for just me to do. And then on top of that, it's a lot of researching I had to do beforehand. It's a lot of, training up, lining up what I'm going to say and all that stuff. Well, with an interview style podcast, it's you and me talking. And it goes, here we are an hour and 11 minutes into it. So, I've noticed that my podcasts go a whole lot more since I've been doing interviews, and you will too. I mean, once you get into it more and start talking more, it really goes on. True story here, y'all. The first time Ian Kahn came on, when we talked about PSK31. The first time he came on, he's like, I told him, okay, like I do everybody in my show, and here's a behind the scenes shots of what goes on in my in recording of my podcast. I start out, okay, I do 3 segments, and I try to keep each segment to 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 minutes. And if it's 15 minutes, that's a 45-minute podcast, plus or minus. If it's 20 minutes, that's an hour podcast, plus or minus. If it goes over than that, no biggie. It doesn't bother me if it goes over. If it's an hour and a half, no biggie. And Ian says, well, I don't think I could talk for, an hour. I'm not sure I can talk for that long. And the first time we recorded was an hour and 45 minutes, if memory serves. So, when you talk and when you talk to each other, and you're talking about something that you're passionate about, yes, you kind of go off on tangents like we did on this episode. This episode was going to be on WSPRnet, and we've talked about your podcast. We've talked about West Mountain Radio stuff. We've talked about MCOM stuff. We've talked about, all different kind of things, and it's just the natural flow of a conversation. So I hope that y'all really enjoyed this episode. I've really enjoyed talking to you, John, and thank you for the podcast that you put on and the information that you put out there. I really enjoy your podcast. It's really great. So please keep that up. Don't go to a month per episode. Stay at that 2-week mark. Don't go anything less than that. But I really appreciate you coming on and doing your podcast and helping me with this one and telling my listeners about you. So hopefully this will gain a little bit of your listenership. More than likely, they probably already listened to you since you're on Hamradio 360, which is like the Hamradio mothership, I guess you could say, podcast with Kale and George and Jeremy, and now you. So, I'm sure y'all have great listenership, and you've seen a great response from the Hamradio community. But I guess
it's been great. Like I say, I've enjoyed your podcast too. It's always. There's such a need out there for this conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's why I appreciate your podcast. And like I appreciated Cal's and George and Jeremy's and the other ones out there with Gary and David and even, to the people that ran around a long time, the longer podcasts. And I think that like Cal and I kind of talk about, we need this conversation in the hobby. Mm-hmm. We need less of the posturing on Facebook. Mm-hmm. You're wrong, I'm right, no matter even if you're agreeing with me. And how dare you talk about Baofeng. I think we need this as a hobby.
Okay, I'm going to have to edit out that part. Just that. No,
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
But I think we need this. I mean, we need this conversation with amateur radio, and that's why I really like the podcast format and this conversation format. That's why I appreciate your show.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps it up, y'all. There will be links to everything that we've talked about in the show notes of today's episode, as well as the link to the Field Radio podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And you'll enjoy it as much as I do. And definitely check out those training segments because they are very interesting. And take it to your show, to your club meetings. Do it on your on-the-air nets. Like you said, they're only like 3 or 4 minutes long, so they're not that much. So great information in a short period of time. And everybody will learn something from it. So, John, thank you very much for coming on. And
thank you very much.
I will, I guess, let's hear you the next time you're on, because you're on before I am. So,
yeah, yes.
All right, John. Thanks again, and have a great evening.
All right, thank you.
73.
All
right, y'all. So that pretty much wraps it up. John, thanks again for coming on. I greatly appreciate it, and I can't say this enough. I really enjoy your podcast as well. If y'all have not heard his podcast, he's on part of the Hamradio 360 family, and it's the Field Radio podcast. You can find it on iTunes. I'm sure he's probably in like Stitcher and stuff like that as well. But you can definitely find it on iTunes. Just search for Field Radio podcast, and you can find that. And if you go over to the hamradio360.com website, click on Field Radio up at the top. You can see all his feed and subscribe to his channel as well. So, John, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the awesome information that you provided in this episode. Pat, I hope that these answered your questions. and you learned a little bit about WSPRnet. And for all those others out there that didn't know what WSPRnet was, I hope this answered your questions. If you have anything further that you want to know about, shoot me an email and I'll see if I can get those questions answered. If not, I will point you in the direction that you can go to get those questions answered as well. That pretty much wraps it up for this episode. I want to thank all of y'all. If you like what you heard here on this episode and you want to help out further than just listening, and don't get me wrong here, I appreciate all of y'all that are listening and sharing my episodes. Please do share them with your friends. But if you want to help out a little bit more, you want to help out, say, financially, there are several ways you can do that. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal. You can become a per-episode contributor through Patreon, and you can do that for as low as $1 an episode. So that's $2 a month. And it goes a long way to helping what the costs are with this podcast. And you can also simply shop on Amazon through my affiliate link. You can find additional information on how to do each of these at everythinghamradio.com/support. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up. So thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, this is K5CLM signing out. 73 y'all.